Hello and welcome to part 2. I hope you've come back to join me because I have more to say about this card if you haven't heard enough already. Perhaps you'd just like to look at the artwork, but I do feel like there's so much that's changed and so much that's got meaning to it that I can't just show you it and say, right, that's it, that's the Revamp by. It's not really my thing. So, but I understand that, asking you to watch for two 20-minute videos is a long time, so I can well imagine why people don't come back for part 2s. Anyway, so where were we? Yes, we were looking at this. I'm still going into the artwork here, by the way. So I'm looking at the original, not the very disappointed printed versions. So that was my Leaping Spirit. The fire here is very similar to the original fire in the sort of, that's the version they used for the actual printed card. So the fire retains the same shape with the sort of fire elemental leaping in it, but there are other changes. What are they? Yeah, well, there are other changes but sort of similarities. Here we have the original with the two birds flying out of his finger. Well, he's creating. He's magicked them up. Whatever he's doing in his trance dancing, he's sending those birds flying out of his finger, as it were. This is how it is now. So we have 3 birds rather than 2, because 3 is a magical number, and it's also my favourite number. So we have 3 birds and a rather brightly coloured kind of rainbow thing leading out of his finger. Now this was grossly disappointing when I came to the printed version, but then most things about this card have been. But look how vibrant it is here. It's really, really woof, which I wanted it to be, because that's the magic that he's making there. So it had to stand out. Just show you that there. What else have we not looked at in terms of this design? Not a lot really. Pretty much there. The 3 leaves. Those 3 leaves are still in place. 1, 2, 3. What has changed is there is now water. I hope you can gather this. If I come up here, there is water coming from behind here, flowing down here, down, down, down. Why? Why did I do that? Because the original card has just a yellow background of grass. That's it, and sky, a yellow kind of yellowy, bluey, greeny sky, and grass, we've kept the mossy bank. There's the mossy bank comparison and the tree trunk. But I had to add in water because I was thinking, well, yes, the element of this card is air. But if we think of the Rider-Waite-Smith card and all the elements on the Magician's table represented, then I thought this card should have those elements in it too, because of the nature of this card. Because although this is not the Everyday Enchantment Tarot where I've given you as many cues as possible, I still want to give you cues and clues about how this card connects to the more traditional versions. So there is now water in there, and there is fire in there, because we had fire before, and we had earth and we had air, but we had no water. So now we've got the water kind of coming down in the background, coming over the rocks here and disappearing off the edge. Just let you see that. So now it includes all the elements together, and he's bringing them together and working with them in his cunning magical dance thing. Just show you his face. Although I printed those pictures. If you watched video 1, I printed those pictures of Catweasel out long after I actually revamped this man's face, because I just knew this is what he looked like. He always looked like this in my head. This was his head. This is his head. And it still is his head, so I didn't reference that until later on. And where are you? There's just too many pieces of paper. Right, yeah, it doesn't actually look that much like him, but you get the gist of what I've softened him out a lot and made him Although he looks like he could, if he opened his eyes, he could be quite startling, I think. But while he's lost in his reverie, he just looks quite soft and gentle. But he is the cunning man, so he isn't all he seems, I suppose. I got my signature on the original, but on the printed version that just fell off the end because it's just nothing is working out with this printer as it should be. So what else can I tell you about this before I go on to explaining the title of the cards and what's happened with the printed versions? Yes, what made me think about this card was the previous video I did, which was the strange one, the kind of odd, the wild card video about the strange screwdriver, which attracted rude comments from Spanish people or people from South America. I'm not sure, but seemed to be speaking in Spanish anyway. And it was my first ever sort of rude comments under my videos, and it was probably because of the keywords that I used in the videos or because of the shape of the screwdriver itself. Anyway, that whole video was about finding the magic in the mundane rather than making magic. It was about finding it, which is the whole of my kind of ethos of the everyday enchantment, is rather than actually... I used to be somebody that actively made magic like this man is, but then I kind of moved away from that into finding magic and going with that to wherever that would take me. So he is obviously actively making magic, whereas I would be in my own way be finding the magic in more kind of prosaic ways, I suppose, rather than ritually conjuring it up as he is doing. So, but he is the magician, and that's what he does. That's what he's there for in this deck, to embody that quality. But I called him, as we have said in the first video, he was the cunning man, because all of my work kind of references England. I would say the British Isles as well, yes, but I don't ever say the United Kingdom, because the whole idea of kings of any kind, even if we haven't got a king, but the whole idea of that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit. So yes, it's very native to where I live, my work, and so the cunning man reference came out of that, and all of the, you know, the trees, the wild creatures, our creature kin, everything kind of references my experience in this land that I live in, because that's, I think, the most authentic thing to do. However, cunning man, people might think cunning. Well, so I did a little bit of kind of thinking about the word cunning, because we're going to come to that in a minute with the name changes, which is a little bit undecided at the moment. Cunning we think of as being something, you know, underhand and devious and kind of foxy, which I don't think there's anything wrong with being foxy, because foxies have to live by their cunning. But it also has a, you know, there's the skillfulness, there's a resourcefulness there, there's achieving or manifesting one's own will by your own cunning. And that's probably where the name came from originally. I haven't done enough research into that, although I probably would have done when I was creating this card. It's just been a long time since I've done that kind of reading up. But the word cunning also gives us that sort of flip side, the negative side that we have to remember about every tarot card. And there is trickery involved. If he is the magician, magicians can be masters of illusion. They don't have to be creating actual magic. They can be convincing us that they are, but maybe they're not. And that whole sort of deceitfulness and other things that we kind of associate with the foxy nature. It would have been nice to have a fox in here, actually, but I think I put foxes in quite a lot of things, and perhaps not. Anyway, he wasn't in here, so the fox is not in here, but the foxy nature is. So, yes, that kind of... we have to be careful, because is what he's showing us genuine transformational magic, or is it trickery? So that's part of the meaning. But we're not really talking about meaning in these cards so much. It's just things that I consider while I'm working, because while I'm working I'm not kind of a blank. I'm thinking about all of these things and what I'm incorporating and kind of imbuing the work with the things that I'm pondering on. So yes, he is the cunning man, but he can't be the cunning man in this version of the deck because this revamp needs to use the word spirit and the word wild in each title. So if you refer back to my other revamps, that the title has got something spirit, something wild. I don't know which way round to put them. I mean, the most obvious way round. So this is my not very satisfactory print. Bring it back up here and you can see it's turned all the colours into this garish kind of bluey. It's lost all the subtlety of the greens. Beautiful greens and bright vibrant colours and lovely verdant kind of world that the original artwork is. And that's why I think it's so important that I'm doing these, that I can show you the original artwork, even if the screen bleaches it out a bit, and even if your screen bleaches it out a bit more, you can still see the difference between my printed version and that. Just hold it up one more time, so it's flanked by the two printed versions, and you can see that, you know, from that lovely rainbow flowing from his finger, we've now got kind of it's just not good. But the main point of this is that we put the titles in. So the most obvious way of doing this is to call him Magical Spirit, because he is the magician. Can't call him the Cunning Man, so he has to be something spirit. So this is the version Magical Spirit. You can see how awful this print is. It's just fluffed everything out. It just lost all its definition. It's really, I mean, it would be okay if you hadn't seen the original, which is so sharp, and I've worked so hard and there's so much detailing in it, and then you get this kind of, I say this every time, don't I? So anyway, back to the title, Magical Spirit, Wild Cunning. Now that would be the most obvious version. Wild Cunning, that would be the cunning of the fox. That would be his inherent cunning nature. His wild nature is to be the cunning man. So that works. Or we can have Cunning Spirit, and then we get, more satisfactorily, I think, Wild Magic. Now this is very tricky because I can't really decide. I am presuming that this one, Magical Spirit, Wild Cunning, will be the one that will probably be gone for, but I really like the idea that this one had Wild Magic, because that's precisely what he is doing, and he is a cunning spirit. It's just that people who aren't familiar with that tradition of the cunning man or woman, the cunning, the folklore, the folk magician of the village or the town or the area, or the wandering folk magician, folk healer, they will think, what's cunning spirit got to do with the magician? And you know, it shocked me to know that my everyday enchantment deck was in Russian and possibly going to be in other languages, and I'm thinking, how, if this ever sees light of day as a revamped deck, is somebody in a different country going to interpret cunning spirit? This might be a bit bizarre. I had some people very confused about some of the things that I had in this Wild Spirit deck. Not that many, because at the point then I didn't even have email, and I would receive letters very rarely from Llewellyn, the publisher, about people who were perturbed about things that I'd done, and there was Robin Hood references and all sorts of things that didn't translate into where they lived, and they just didn't understand what I was trying to say. So I'm thinking it would be the same with this cunning spirit. Well, what's that? Wild magic makes lovely, beautiful sense, and I just love wild magic. But is this better? It's more literal. This is the magician, the magical spirit, with his wild cunning. We lose wild magic, but we probably reach more people. The thing with me is that I'm poetic, I'm lyrical, and that I love words, and wild magic just sounds better than, that just sits so beautifully there, doesn't it? Whereas wild cunning is like, but, and magical spirit to me seems more obvious. And I'd like it to be this one, but I'm not. At the moment, I'm just going to put them both out there because I don't know. I'm not even getting very much feedback of anybody at the moment. I don't know whether people are really leaving me alone because of my pain and how hard it is to type, or they're leaving me alone because of the grief that I'm going through, or whether they just haven't got anything to say about my videos at all. I put the comments back because I was so keen to get people's feedback, and now people have kind of dwindled away because people are looking at the videos, they're just not saying anything. So I don't really know what's going on there. I think people maybe have just been kind to me instead of backing off me in the respect of not having me type too much, or the respect that they know I'm going through this terrible bereavement. Which again, you may wonder, why am I doing all this work? Well, I've explained this before. It's the only thing that I can possibly do that takes me away from my terrible sadness. I am just so deeply sad all the time. And while I was doing this, even though I got a little bit more involved in it than the other revamps that I was doing, which was lovely, I was still having flashbacks all the time. I was having flashbacks to things that I did with Gary. If I heard a bird outside, I'd get a flashback of somewhere that we'd been. Just looking at the woodland, I'd get a flashback. It's permanent. It's a kind of permanent condition that my grief is ongoing, but that does not mean that you cannot say something to me. And if I am in too much pain to respond, I will just give you a heart and a like. But usually people are commenting so little that I'm able to type a little bit more. It's just be really helpful to know. With the last revamp I did, which was the Lover's card, which would have been Twin Spirits, I got very little feedback at all. So I don't know how that one went down, and it didn't get that many views either. So I'm not sure whether I went completely off on that one. It's very hard for me to tell because I'm not in my right space. I'm in trauma, really. I'm in shock. I've just lost somebody, my closest person, unexpectedly, and I'm just totally reeling. So by doing this, it kind of brings me back into what I've always been, what I've always done, what matters, and it gives me something useful to give to you, so that I'm not just retreating into myself. So I am actually putting something out into the world. I don't quite know where I'm going now, really, because I don't want to keep going on about myself. This is not the point. Anyway, so we'll forget that. Just please do leave me some comments, because I'd like to know whether, I don't know, see, I lose perspective. I'm just here on my own, intensely working on these, and then I don't know whether I've made a good job or not. I really don't. I think I have, because I do my best, and I won't stop until I feel like I have completely done my best. But I don't really know. Is that translating? I keep going back to the original here because it's got so much detail in it. And if I show you the printed versions, you're just not going to see that. And I want you to see all the colours. I think my camera is actually focusing. All the blending, all the colours, all how bright it was, how much work went into it, and then it turned into the ones you see flanking it. Right, I'm going to come back up here again and hope the whole thing's in. Is that in? If I just stay there. How's that? I'm probably shaking very, very slightly, and I apologise for that, but okay, so that was the Wild Spirit revamp of the Cunning Man. I've managed to take up 20 more minutes of your time. I will leave you with him and his friends as he... Oh, don't you wish you were there in that woodland? It's just... That was something that really drew me in. I just thought how lovely to be him, just completely taken away with his transported away in his inner workings, and in this lovely land that he's in. just the whole idea of the Wild Spirit Tarot was to transport people into that fairy tale, folklore, old woodland world, if you like, that probably never really existed, but we would like to. And the whole idea with the Everyday Enchantment deck was to do exactly the opposite and bring us back into this world so we could find the magic here. So they're two very, very, very different things. But there is something about this one that makes me want to go and join them and hopefully be spirited away into his realm where all sorts of unexpected things could happen. Anyway, so that's me going away. I hope this has been of some use or relevance or interest to you. And thank you for watching my screwdriver videos as well. That was yeah, that was an unusual one, and I'm very grateful that people watched it, because it wasn't really about a screwdriver per se. It was about everything that it brought to mind and conjured up. And yeah, anyway, enough. Lots of love for all our relations. Always stay free, and very, very grateful to you for all your support and for watching these videos. Bye. Lots of love.